Puerto Rico is often called the oldest colony in the world. You hear it constantly in politics, in social media, in documentaries, but historically, is that actually true? Because the deeper you go into Puerto Rico's political history, the more complicated the story becomes. Puerto Rico has been a Taíno territory, a Spanish military frontier, a captaincy general, a province of Spain, an autonomous government, a U.S. military possession, an unincorporated territory, and a commonwealth. So what exactly is Puerto Rico? And what is it now? And has Puerto Rico been a colony for 500 years? Today, we're going into 500 years of Puerto Rico's political status. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Chronicles and Cocktails. I'm Josué, the spirited historian, and today we are tackling one of the biggest subjects in Puerto Rico. It has to do with the status, it has to do with the word colony, and it has to do with a lot of people repeating a lot of stuff that may be half true. And it just keeps going on, it keeps getting repeated. Because the opinion of one lawyer one time that said something, and then you just keep going down that road. But today, sit down, get comfortable, and I know, a lot of you are just not gonna agree. But you know what? That's okay. So sit back, and you know what? Go get some ice. We're gonna be making a really cool cocktail for this episode. You're gonna need it. Before Spain, before America, before Puerto Rico was called Puerto Rico, the island was known as Boriquen, and it existed inside a political active Caribbean world. The Taíno people organized themselves through regional chiefdoms called cacicazgos, ruled by caciques. This was not modern nation state. It was a network of indigenous territories connected through trade, alliances, migration, and conflict. And the Caribbean was not peaceful. Spanish chroniclers described repeated conflict between Taíno people and Caribes. Some historians argue these were territorial raids. Others believe Europeans exaggerated aspects of the violence to justify conquest. But was it that the Caribes lived in Puerto Rico as much as the Taíno did? One thing is clear. Puerto Rico already had political organization and territorial identity long before Europeans arrived. Puerto Rico did not begin existing when Columbus arrived. Puerto Rico entered European history when Columbus arrived. Very different thing. In 1493, Cristóbal Colón arrived during his second voyage, and Puerto Rico entered the expanding political structure of the Spanish crown. Now, this is where things immediately become more complicated than modern slogans. People today often use the word colony very broadly. But Spain did not organize its empire exactly like the British Empire that later ruled North America. The Spanish world operated through kingdoms, viceroyalties, audiencias, municipalities, captaincies general, and, of course, provinces. Puerto Rico was part of the Spanish imperial system, yes, but that system itself evolved repeatedly over 4 centuries. 4 centuries. In the early period, Puerto Rico functioned as a frontier settlement, a military outpost, and an extraction economy tied to the Atlantic world. The indigenous population collapsed catastrophically from disease, forced labor, and integration and conquest. African slavery expanded. European settlement grew, and Puerto Rico became increasingly strategic. Puerto Rico eventually evolved into one of the most military important territories in the Caribbean. Spain transformed the island into a captaincy general. That gave Puerto Rico greater military and administrative importance because it stood directly in the path of European rivals. This island was not sitting quietly in the Caribbean. Puerto Rico was one of the great military frontiers of the Atlantic. Puerto Rico survived attacks from Francis Drake, George Clifford, Dutch invasions, and the massive British invasion of 1797. That invasion failed, and because it failed, Puerto Rico remained Spanish. And people watching this episode should remember, these walls are older than the United States itself. The 1800s transformed Puerto Rico politically. Spain itself was changing. Napoleon invaded the Iberian Peninsula. Constitutional movements spread. Much of Spanish America became independent, and Puerto Rico's political position evolved again. Puerto Rico increasingly functioned as an overseas province of Spain. Puerto Ricans sent representatives to the Spanish Cortes. Puerto Ricans held Spanish citizenship. The island participated directly in Spanish political life. And this is where the modern debate becomes intellectually dishonest in all sides. Because some people erase the colonial realities entirely, but others erase the provincial and constitutional realities entirely. Historically, both existed at different points. Puerto Rico moved through periods of military administration, constitutional participation, provincial representation, and centralized rule. The political structure evolved repeatedly. In 1897, Spain granted Puerto Rico the Carta Autonómica. This gave Puerto Rico broad local autonomy under Spanish sovereignty. And let's get something straight. A lot of people get confused by this. Some people claim it was independence when it really wasn't. We were an actual autonomous province. No independence. Puerto Rico now had a provincial parliament, administrative autonomy, and local governance structures. Spain still controlled defense and foreign affairs, like it did with all the other provinces. But Puerto Rico had entered a very different political phase from earlier centuries. And here comes one of history's great ironies. Puerto Rico receives autonomy from Spain, and months later, the US of A invades. In 1898, during the Spanish-American War, American forces invaded Puerto Rico. Spain lost the war. Under the Treaty of Paris, Puerto Rico passed from Spanish sovereignty to American sovereignty. This wasn't independence either. It was a change of sovereignty. For the next 2 years, Puerto Rico was governed by the United States military, and Puerto Rico entered the American century. In 1900, the Foraker Act created a civilian government for the island. Puerto Rico became an American territory, but not all U.S. territories are treated the same. And this is where Puerto Rico becomes constitutionally unique. The insular cases established the concept of unincorporated territory, meaning Puerto Rico belongs to the United States, but was not fully part of the U.S. constitutionally. And this is exactly why many scholars and activists argue Puerto Rico's territorial status is colonial in nature, because Congress retains ultimate sovereignty. In 1917, the Jones-Shafroth Act granted United States citizenship to Puerto Ricans. Migration increased, military participation increased, and Puerto Rico became deeply tied to the United States. And now, el Estado Libre Asociado. In 1952, Puerto Rico adopted its own constitution and became the Estado Libre Asociado. And this is where modern political interpretation explodes, because different people understand the phrase very differently. Supporters viewed the argument as a unique partnership with the United States. Critics argued Puerto Rico remained fundamentally territorial because Congress still retained ultimate constitutional authority. And here is the key point. Both sides are drawing from real historical and legal arguments. What do you think? Leave it in the comments, which I know by now, like it has happened in the last few episodes, that people watching the episode pause it to comment, and it's been comments and comments all over. Well, leave it in the comments. I like to read. I read them all. If I don't respond, take it as you will. So, is Puerto Rico the oldest colony in the world? Historically, not really. That phrase is more political rhetoric than precise history, because Puerto Rico was not politically frozen for 500 years. Under Spain alone, Puerto Rico evolved through multiple administrative and constitutional forms: frontier territory, captaincy general, province, and autonomous government. And under the United States, Puerto Rico became something constitutionally unique, an unincorporated territory. Now, some people absolutely argue that territorial condition remains colonial in practice, and that argument is serious. But the full historical reality is more complicated than slogans from any side. Puerto Rico's history cannot honestly be reduced to just a colony, or just a province, or just a territory, or basically a state. All of those flatten history. The truth is more human than that, more political, more constitutional, more Caribbean. And maybe that's why Puerto Rico's status debate never truly ends, because every side contains part of the truth, and every side simplifies part of the story. But what to do when the majority ratifies the current situation? Puerto Rico's current arrangement has repeatedly been ratified, maintained, or modified through democratic participation by Puerto Rican voters themselves. So, why would a small percentage of the population would want to change something that democratically the majority has elected to be? And it seems that it's shifted also. It's moving towards annexation more than it is moving to independence. But that's a reality, which also is a form of finishing what some people call the colony. I'm not talking about political parties, and I'm not talking about politics in general. I mean, this is politics, but the essence of this issue goes in deeper and has more historical roots than what you can see in the surface. So, saying Puerto Rico is the oldest colony in the world, or that we've been a colony for 500 plus years, some people argue that you can't call it a province when the government in Madrid appointed the governors. Well, what about now? The government in Washington, D.C. does not appoint the governors. Does that make us not a colony? At the end, everything is debatable. And most people argue not with facts nor historical records. They argue with emotions. I mean, they don't even look at the scientific facts. You can believe in whatever you want. I don't mind. But you gotta argue with facts. Opinions? I have my opinions. You have your opinions. Other people have their own opinions. But opinions are not facts. Are we really the oldest colony in the world? Well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It was a little bit intense in terms of history. But usually on Wednesdays, that's what I'm going to be doing. I don't release every Wednesday, but when I do, that's the type of content we're going to be having, because a lot of people ask me a lot of stuff about Puerto Rico and the history. And this is a history channel, but it's a history, travel, food, cocktails, fun, but serious. So subscribe, share it, and comment. Let me know what you think. I had a lot of comments in the last few weeks for the last 4 or 5 episodes, which is really good. People are commenting, letting me know. I have new ideas for episodes from... Actually, this episode was inspired by a comment. So let me know. Comment, share it, hit the bell button, and all that good stuff. You know how it is. I hope you're having a great Sunday. And you know what? We needed it. We needed it. This is just rum on ice. Have fun. Get smart. Read a lot. So, have fun. Get smart. Be good to others. Be a decent human being. I mean, really. Grab a cocktail or two. Don't overdo it. Don't drink and drive. And it's Wednesday, but you can still go to church. Salud.